Hello everyone, I am Sumit Saxena. Today we are going to see GATE 2019 solution of mechanical engineering paper, specifically production planning and control, inventory control and operations research. Before jumping to the questions coming in the question paper, let's see the distribution of the questions. So there is one mark question and two mark question. So total 5 mark questions, that will be around 5% of the total paper, that is 100 marks. So let's see the first question. The table presents the demand of a product by simple 3 months moving average method. The demand forecast of the product for the month of September is. So month Jan to month August, the demand is given and they are asking the demand forecast of the product for the month of September. So before starting, just let's see in brief what are the type of forecasting and what is this in the question simple moving average or simple 3 months moving average method is. So we have forecast. So forecast is basically of two type. One is qualitative in which surveys and everything is taken care of, and based on that surveys or interviews they predict the sales or the demand of any product. Now the second type is the quantitative or objective. Or objective. So in this particular type of forecasting, there are again two types. One is the time series in which the actuals of the past is used to predict the future, and another one is the causal or econometric. So in causal or econometric, the main method is we call, or you have heard previously as, the linear regression. But today our focus is on time series models. So in time series, broadly, we have four methods. One is past average method. Second is simple moving average. Also denoted as SMA. Next is weighted moving average. Or WMA, and the fourth one or the last one is exponential smoothing method. So in past average method, we simply take the average of the past performance or the past demand or past sales and predict the future as the average of past. But in simple moving average, we use similar to the past average, but the period we are taking in the past is going to change. So let's say past 12 months demand is given, but if the question is saying that use for past 4 months only, so in simple moving average we will use the latest past 4 months, we will take the average and that will be the forecast of the coming month. And in the weighted moving average, we do the same as simple moving average, just the only difference is we do not take the normal average, we give the weights for each past demand, and the weights could be any number such that all the weights should be equals to 1. And in exponential smoothing method, we give the weights in an exponentially decreasing manner. But our focus for this question is particularly on simple moving average. So what is this simple moving average? So it is also called as rolling average. Now, what is this rolling average or simple moving average? So this method basically use past data and calculate a rolling average for a constant period. As we knew earlier, fresh average is computed at the end of each period by adding the actual demand data for the most recent period and deleting the data for the older period. So as soon as you move ahead in the future, you delete the oldest data from your calculation and you include the latest past data in your calculation. So in this method, data changes from period to period. Therefore, it is termed as moving average method or rolling average method. So let's say if in this particular method, if you are given n as the period for simple moving average. So since we knew that if we are taking certain number of periods as our in the call calculation, so we can calculate our first forecasting in the next period only. So if we are taking the past n period for simple moving average, we can do our first forecasting for n plus 1 period only. So we are using past n period data and we will be able to forecast for n plus 1th period onwards. So let's see the question again and see for how many months the data is given. So in the question itself, from January to August, data is given. So, and it is asking for demand forecast for the month of September. So, let's say here we have month, then we have demand, and finally we have forecast. So we have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and August. So we have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and August. And in the last, we will have September. So demand for Jan is given as 450, for February 440, for March 460, for April 510, for May 520, for June 495, for July 475, for August 560. Now we saw earlier that if the n for simple moving average, the period for simple moving average is n, we can do the forecast for n plus 1th period only. So by simple, in the question it is given by simple 3 months moving average method. So it is showing as 3 months. So let's consider January, February, and March. So by using January, February, and March demand, we can forecast only starting from April. So take the average of 450, 440, and 460. You will get the forecast by 3 months moving average method for the month of April would be 450. 450. Similarly, for the month of May, you will get forecast as 470, and similarly for the month of June, you will take May, April, and March demand, will take the average and get the value for forecast of the month June as 496.67. Similarly, for the month of July, it would be 508.33, and for the month of August, the forecast would be 496.67. Now it is asking for the forecast of month of September. So for getting the forecast for month of September, you take the values of August, July, and June, because in the question it is asked as 3 months moving average method. So take these three values, and if you take the average, the value you will get as 510. So this will be the forecast of September month by using the simple 3 months moving average method, and our answer would be option B, that is 510. Now let's go to second question. Now 5 jobs in this question, it is given 5 jobs J1, J2, J3, J4, and J5 needs to be processed in a factory. Each job can be assigned to any of the 5 different machines M1, M2, M3, M4, and M5. The time durations taken in minutes by the machine for each of the jobs are given in the table. However, each job is assigned to a specific machine in such a way that the total processing time is minimum. The total processing time is how many minutes? So if you read the questions only once, you will get to know that this is the problem of assignment. So in this particular problem, 5 jobs are given, 5 machines are given. For each job, to get performed on any machine, the time is given and they want to minimize the time taken to perform of each job, and they want us to assign the jobs on the machine. So first let's see what is this assignment problem anyway. So assignment problems are special cases of transportation problem. So what is this transportation problem or assignment problem? So let's say if we have a matrix of 4 by 4, and let's say it has 1 2 3 4 as the number of rows and 1 2 3 4 as the number of columns. So here if you can see m equals to n equals to 4. So number of rows and number of columns are equal. So as we know, this assignment problem is a special case of transportation problem. So if you see these 1 2 3 4 or the rows are basically your supplies, and 1 2 3 4 or n your columns are basically your demand of the transportation problem. So special case of transportation problem meaning it has some must conditions with itself. So let's see what are those must conditions. So the first must condition for an transportation problem to be called as the assignment problem is m must be equals to n, and this is true in our case as well because we have 5 jobs and 5 machines. The second must condition is the assignment, any assignment for any of the cell can be either 0 or 1. Again, true for our case as well because it was asked that each job has to be get performed on any of the machine. So one job will be done by one machine only. So either it will be 0 or 1. So let's say job 2 can be done either by machine 3 or it cannot be done by machine 3. So Xij or the assignment would be either 0 or 1. And next condition is that all AIs equals to BJs. Now what are these AIs and BJs? So your AI is basically the supply and BJs are basically the demand. So in assignment problem, your supply is basically the jobs you are having to get performed, and your demand you can say it is similar to the machines we are having to perform those jobs. And if you want to write this whole assignment problem in terms of your linear programming problem, you can write simply as minimization of z equals to double summation in first summation I equals to 1 to n, and in second summation j equals to 1 to n. See carefully, I am writing here both as n for I as well as for j because in our condition m equals to n. So Cij multiplied by Xij. Xij are the assignments we already knew. Now what is this Cij? So Cij is basically profit or cost coefficient. and your xij are basically your decision variables. Now, to solve this particular assignment problem, we are going to use Hungarian method, or we also call it as Flood's technique. So we are going to use Hungarian method or Flood's technique. So for solving this question, we are going to use this particular method. So let's see what is the matrix given for us in the question. So total 5 jobs are given for us. Job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4 and job 5. Similarly, 5 machines are given. And for each job to get performed at each machine, the time taken is also given. If you can see, go back to the question and see the table once again. So 5 jobs are given, 5 machines are given, and the corresponding time in minutes are also given. So come back here and let's write down what are the time given for job 1 to be completed on machine 1. The time taken is 40 minutes. Similarly, this is 30, this is 50, this is 50, this is 58. Similarly, for job 2, this is 26, this is 38, and next is 60. 26, then 38, then 60, then 26, then 38. Similarly, for job 3, it is 40, then 34, then 28, then 24, then 30. For job 4, it is 28, then 40, then 40, then 32, and 48, and 28, and 32, and 38, and 22, and 44. Be very careful when you are solving this particular question in the exam center, because you should not miss any value as wrong given in the question paper and when you are trying to solve this. If you get any value wrong, the whole answer would be wrong. Try very carefully, check very carefully that whatever the value you have written down on your answer sheet, it should be exactly same as it's given in the question paper. So we are going to use our Hungarian method to see how to solve this particular question. So in Hungarian method, we have some steps to solve this particular question. So the very first step is develop opportunity cost matrix. So our first step is develop opportunity cost matrix. So how to develop this opportunity cost matrix? To develop this opportunity cost matrix from the given matrix in our question, there are two sub steps. So the first sub step is from this matrix, try to subtract the smallest element in each row from every element of the corresponding row. For example, if you consider this particular row, the smallest element in this particular row is 30. So try to subtract 30 from each element of this particular row only. Do this for all the 5 rows or all the given rows in your question. So let's try to make the matrix once again. We have 5 jobs and 5 machines. Job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4, job 5, machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, machine 4 and machine 5. So first sub step is subtract the smallest element in each row from every element of corresponding row. So for our first row, the smallest element would be 30. So try to subtract 30 from each element of the first row and you will get the first row as 40 minus 30, that is 10, 30 minus 30, that is 0, 50 minus 30, that is 20, 50 minus 30, again 20, 58 minus 30, 28. Similarly, for second row, the smallest element would be 26. So if you subtract 26 from each of the second row's element, you will get here as 0, then 12, then 34, then again 26 minus 26, 0, then 38 minus 26 would be 12. Similarly, for row 3, our smallest element would be 24. So you will get row 3 as 16, 10, 4, 0 and 6. So for row 4, we have the smallest element as 28. So if you subtract 28 from each element of row 4, you will get 0, 12, 12, 4, 20. For row 5, the smallest element would be 22. Subtract 22 from each element of row 5, you will get 6, 10, 38 minus 22 would be 16, then 0, then 22. Now, this was the sub-step A of step 1 to develop the opportunity cost matrix. So after getting this particular matrix by sub-step A, the next step is sub-step B, in which subtract the smallest element in each column from every element of the corresponding column. So go back. Just for sake of understanding, I am writing this particular slide number as slide number 1 and our next slide as slide number 2. So when I switch from the previous slide to this slide, you won't get confused. Now let's come to the previous slide and see what is the step B. So step B is subtract the smallest element in each column. So let's say for column 1, the smallest element is 0. So subtract 0 from every element in this particular column. Let's say for column 3, the smallest element would be 4. So subtract 4 from each element of that particular column to finally get your opportunity cost matrix. So let's draw the matrix once again. We know we have 5 jobs and 5 machines. Job 1, Job 2, Job 3, Job 4, Job 5, Machine 1, Machine 2, Machine 3, Machine 4, and Machine 5. So our step was subtract the smallest element in each column from every element of the corresponding column. So for column 1, the smallest element is 0. So subtract 0 from each element of column 1. So you will get column 1 as exactly as before. So this would be 10, 0, 16, 0, and 6. Now go back and see the column 2. So column 2, again the smallest element is 0. So subtracting 0 from each element of column 2 would give you the same column 2 as before. So this would be 0, this is 0, then 12, then 10, then 12, then 10. Now go back to the column 3. So for column 3, the smallest element is 4. Now subtract 4 from each element of column 3. So you will get the new column as 16, 30, 0, 8, 12. Now go back and see column 4. So again for column 4, the smallest element is 0. So subtracting 0 from each element of column 4, you will get exactly same as before. So this would be 20, 0, 0, 4, and 0. Now go back for column 5. The smallest element in column 5 is 6. So subtract 6 from each element of column 5. So it would be 22, then 6, then 0, then 14, and finally 16. So this is our opportunity cost matrix. Now, after coming to this particular step, now see if the allocation for this particular matrix is equals to n or m or not. So if allocations equals to n, which is equals to m, which is in our case is 5. Now, what is this allocation? So we will try to allocate a particular job to a particular machine in a certain way and see if the total number of allocations are equals to 5 or not. So how to allocate this? Let's start by row 1 and see how to do that. So you will travel this particular matrix row by row, then column by column, and try to find out the single zero or the row in which only one zero is present at first. Then you will go by each column and you will try to find the column in which only one zero is present, and if it is there you will try to mark that zero by symbol like this, so that we have allocation like this. And if any other zero is present in that particular row or column, the other zeros are marked by this cross, so that we don't allocate anything further on that particular row or column, because we know in our assignment problem we can allocate one machine only on one job only on one machine. So there will be only one allocation in each column and only one allocation in each row. So let's start by the first row, which is 10, 0, 16, 20, and 22. So we have 1 0 here. So we will try to allocate this particular 0, and since there is no other 0 present, neither in this row nor in this column, so we have our first assignment. Let's move to the second row. In second row we have two zeros. Leave this particular row, come to the third row. In this again we have three zeros. Leave this row, come to the fourth row. In this we have only one zero. Allocate this zero. While allocating this zero, try to see if there are any other zero present in this particular row or in this particular column. So if you see here, there is one zero present with respect to column M1. So cross this zero, because since we have already allocated one zero for machine 1, it cannot take more than 1. Now let's go to row 5 and see. Yes, there is one zero present. So allocate this one zero and try to cross all the other zeros present in corresponding row or column. So in the row, no other zero is present, but in the column, two zeros are present. So I am crossing these zeros because we already have one allocation for machine 4 now. Now rows are done. Now travel column wise. So column 1, now no zeros are present. Column 2, no zeros are present which are vacant, nor crows, neither assigned. Now column 3, one zero is present here which can be assigned. Since this particular zero is assigned, try to cross all the other zeros with respect to this row and this column. So in this row, one zero is this present. I'll cross this, and there are no other zeros present in this particular column. Now move to the next column. No vacant zeros are present. Come to the next column. No vacant zeros are present. So all the zeros either assigned or crossed. And if you see the total allocations are only one in row 1, second in row 3, third in row 4, and the fourth is in row 5. So total allocations are only 4, which is not equals to 5. If this is the case, then we know that our solution is not optimal at this particular stage. So now, since the solution is not optimal at this particular stage, we will try to optimize our solution by using our opportunity cost matrix. So let's try to draw again this opportunity cost matrix and see how can we solve it. So we have opportunity cost matrix. We have job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4 and job 5, and we have machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, machine 4 and machine 5, and we have our opportunity cost matrix as 10, 0, 16, 20. This is 20, 22. Then second row we have as 0, 12, 30, 0, 6. Third row we have as 16, 10, 0, 0, 0. Fourth row as 0, 12, 8, 4, 14. And the last row as 6, 10, 12, 0, 16. In the previous allocation, we allocated this 0, we crossed this 0, we crossed this 0, we allocated this 0, we crossed this 0, we crossed this 0, we allocated this 0, and we allocated this 0. So total there were 4 allocations present in the opportunity cost matrix. Now listen very carefully. Listen very carefully. How are we going to optimize this particular matrix? So as we know that the number of allocations is less than the size of the matrix before, so that solution was not optimum. Now we will proceed to find the minimum number of lines required to cover all 0 at least once. So we will try to draw a line from these rows or columns present in the opportunity cost matrix to cover all the zeros are present. So there are some steps involved in that procedure. So the first step is mark all row for which allocation has not been made. So if you go row by row, the first row, one allocation has been made. If you go to the second row, no allocation has been made. So mark all row for which allocation has not been made. So we will mark row 2 with this tick. Now come to row 3, one allocation is there, that is this one. Come to row 4, another allocation is there, that is this one. Now come to row 5, another allocation is there, that is this one. So we mark this row. Now the second step is mark all column which have unassigned 0 in the marked row. Listen again. Mark all columns which have unassigned 0 in the marked row. So marked row is row 2, and we do have two unassigned 0, that is this one and this one. So mark these columns. So we will mark column 1 and column 4. Now the third step is mark all row which have assignment in the marked column. So marked all row which have assignment in the marked column. So marked column are column 1 and column 4. If you see column 1, marked all row which have assignment in the marked column. So marked column is column 1 and assignment in row 4. So we will mark row 4. Now another marked column was column 4, and in column 4 we have only one assignment, that is this one with respect to row 5. So mark this particular row. Now try to see again if there's any marking remaining, as in again go to the second step, that is mark all columns which have unassigned 0 in the marked row. So we mark these two new rows, and in these two rows there are no unassigned 0 available. So we have completed our marking procedure for this particular matrix. Now the next step is draw the minimum number of lines through unmarked row. So minimum number of lines through unmarked row and marked column. So what are unmarked rows? The first row is unmarked row. So we will try to cross this line, and the other unmarked row is row 3. That is this one. Now draw the minimum number of lines through unmarked row and through marked column to cover all 0 at least once, and through marked column. So column 1 is marked and column 4 is marked. So if you see, by drawing these two lines and these two lines, if you see, we have covered all zeros at least at once. So see, this 0 is covered by the horizontal line going by row 1. These two zeros are covered by the vertical lines passing through column M1 and column M4. These three zeros are covered by horizontal line passing through row J3. This row, this 0 is covered by vertical line passing through column M1, and this particular 0 is covered by vertical line passing through column M4. Now after drawing these line, select the smallest element that do not have line through it. So if you see, the elements which do not have line through them are 12, 30, 6, 12, 8, 14, and 10, 12, and 16. So the smallest element is by which no lines are passing is 6. So now what you will do, you will subtract this 6, this particular element, from all elements that do not have line through them. So what are the elements that do not have line through them? Are 12, 36, 12, 8, 14, and 10, 12, 16. So subtract this element from all these elements by which no line is going through and add it to every element at the intersection of two lines. So intersection of two lines is basically J1 and M1, J1 and M4, J3 and M1, and J3 and M4. So add this particular element to these four locations where two lines are intersecting and leave the remaining elements of the matrix unchanged. So let's try to make the matrix using the conditions which we just heard. So we have job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4, and job 5. We have machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, machine 4, and machine 5. So our rule was we have the smallest element as 6. So now the first rule was subtracted from all the elements that do not have line through them. So if you see 12, 30 and 6 do not have line through them. So 12 is at location J2 M2. So 12 minus 6, that is 6. 30 minus 6, that is 24. And J2 M5 location 6. 6 minus 6, that is 0. Now come to the row 4, that is 12. So 12 minus 6 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. And at J4 M5 location, 14 minus 6 is 8. Now at location J5 M2, 10 minus 6, that is 4. And 12 minus 6, that is 6. And 16 minus 6, that is 10. And the second thing was added to the every element at the intersection of two lines. So intersection of two lines, first is at J1 M1. So 10 plus 6 is 16. At J1 M4, 20 plus 6, 26. At J3, 16 plus 6, 22. At J3 M4, 0 plus 6, 6. So there were only 4 intersections and leave the remaining elements of the matrix unchanged. So all the other elements will remain as it is. So this would be 0, this would be 16, this would be 22, and this would be 0. This would be 0 for row 3. This would be already 22. This would be 10. This would be 0. This would be 0 for row J4. This would be 0. This is already 6, already 2. This would be 4. Now for row J5, this would be 6. This is already 4. This is already 6. This would be 0. Now next step is mark the allocation once again in the new opportunity cost matrix. So this is our new opportunity cost matrix. Opportunity cost matrix, OCM. OCM. So what is the technique for marking? We'll go first row by row, then column by column. We'll try to find out the 1 0 available in any of the row or any on the column, we will try to allocate that particular zero, and whatever other zeros are present in the corresponding row and corresponding column, we will try to cross those zeros so that we do not allocate them again. So we do not have more than one allocation in any of the rows or in any of the column. So let's go by row 1. In row 1, we have 1 0 and only 1 0 we can allocate it. Now come to row 2. Row 2 have 3 zeros, leave it as of now. Come to row 3. Row 3 has 2 zeros, leave it as of now. Come to row 4. Row 4 have only 1 0. Mark this 0, and in the corresponding row or in the corresponding column, if there are any other 0 present, cross those zeros. So no zeros are present in the corresponding row, but 1 0 is present in the corresponding column. So cross that particular 0. Now come to row 5. Row 5 again have 1 0 only. So allocate this 0 and cross all the corresponding zeros present in the corresponding column or the corresponding row. Corresponding row, no zeros present. Corresponding column, 1 0 is present. Cross this particular 0. Now come column wise. Column 1, no zeros are present now. Column 2, no zeros are present now. Column 3, 1 0 is present now. So allocate this 0 and cross all other zeros present in the corresponding row or the corresponding column. Corresponding column, no zeros are present. Corresponding row, 1 0 is present. Cross this particular 0. Now come to column 5. No zeros are present. Come to column 5. 1 0 is present. So allocate this particular 0. So now if you see and try to calculate how many total number of allocations we are having. So we have one at location J1 M2, another at location J2 M5, another at location J3 M3, another at location J4 M1, and finally at location J5 M4. So they are total 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, total 5 allocations. And the size of the matrix is also 5. So we are at finally at the optimal location. We have our allocation. We have our final optimal allocation. So what does this signify? This signifies that job 1 must be done at machine 2, job 2 at machine 5, job 3 at machine 3, job 4 at machine 1, and job 5 at machine 4 to take the minimum time for machining. Now, let's see just once again what was the question asking. So, question was asking, however, each job is assigned to a specific machine in such a way that total processing time is minimum. So now we have assigned what were the locations. So for J1, it was M2. For J2, it was M5. For J3, it was M3. For J4, it was M1. And for J5, it was M4. So the total processing time. So the total processing time would be equals to the time consumed by job 1, job 2, job 3, job 4 and job 5. So for job 1, the time is at machine 2, that is 30. For job 2, the time is at machine 5, that is 38. Plus the time for job 3 at machine 3 would be 28. Plus time for job 4 at machine 1 would be 28. Plus time for job 5 at machine 4 would be 22. So it would be addition of 30, 38, 28, 28 and 22. So the total would be 1 146 minutes. So since this is a numerical type of answer, our answer would be 146. Now let's go to last question, that is question third, and see what is this question. So in this particular question, a project consists of 6 activities. The immediate predecessors of each activity and the estimated duration is also provided in the table below. So some activities are given, their immediate predecessors are given, and estimated duration of those activities are given in weeks. If all activities other than S, if all activities other than S take the estimated amount of time, the maximum duration in weeks of the activity S without delaying the completion of the project is. So it is saying that no other activity is getting delayed, but only S, and it takes the maximum duration for that activity such that the project completion time is not getting changed. This is very important point, that the project completion time is not getting compromised. Then what is the maximum duration? Another important word, the maximum duration of the activity S. So we will try to solve this particular question by drawing the network diagram as activity on arrow type of diagram. That is something like this. So node 1, node 2, something, node 3, and finally node 4. We have activity A, activity B, activity C, and activity D. So this is activity on arrow type of network diagram. For constructing the network diagram, we have some rules as well. So rules for network construction. So what are those rules? First rule is an activity can only be started when all the activities earlier to it are completed. Let's go back to the question and see what does mean. So if you see activity R, so activity R can only be started when the immediate predecessor of activity R, that is activity Q, is getting completed. Similarly, activity S can only be started when the immediate predecessor of activity S, that is P and R, are getting completed. Now, second rule is no two or more activities may have the same head and tail events. As in, if this is our node 1 and let's say this is our node 2. So let's say if we have 3 activities, activity A, activity B, and activity C. So no 2 activities can have the same head event and tail events. Head events and tail events. So for taking care of this particular situation, we have something called dummy activity. So the use of dummy activity is twofold. One is in this particular type of situations as we see here, and another is actually given in our question. So we'll see the use of dummy activity by creating the network diagram given in our question. What is this dummy activity anyway? So this is an activity which is used to show the logic or dependency or relationship of an activity over the other, but it does not consume any time or resource. It surely does not consume any time or resource for its completion, and it is denoted by the dotted line. So if you want to solve this, the above problem, we will use, if you want to use a dummy activity, it will be something like this. So this is the dummy activity D1, which will consume the zero resources or zero time. Now, the next rule is that the length and direction of arrow is indicative only. So it's not like if one arrow is small and another arrow is large, so it is representing the small amount taken or the large amount taken with respect to the arrows. No, it is just indicative only. And time flows from left to right. Of course, we start at the left at node 1, and as we move towards right, we are going ahead in the time. And another rule for constructing the network diagram is there should be no looping and dangling on the network diagram. Now, what is this looping and dangling? So for constructing the network diagram, looping should not be there, as in if you go something like here, then come here, then come here, then go backward. So this will be a loop. So this loop is not allowed. That is called looping. Another thing is called dangling. Dangling is also not allowed when constructing the network diagram. So what is dangling? When an activity other than the final activity does not have any successor activity, then the situation is called as dangling. Now, what is this dangling? Let's say you have something like this, then this, then this, then this, then finally this, then come here, some random activities. So let's say this is activity A, B, C. Mind it that I have the arrow at the right, towards right, not towards left. So this is not a loop. Activity D, activity E, this is F, this is G, and let's say we have one more activity called activity X. So this is the final element, this is the starting, and somewhere here there is one activity which is not have any successor and not connected to the final element. So this is called the situation as dangling. To solve this, what we will do? We will remove this from here, and we will connect this particular activity directly to the final activity. So this way we can remove the dangling part of the problem itself. Now we know the dummy activity. Now we will try to draw the network diagram, or we will try to construct the network diagram. Once again, let's see the question and try to draw the network diagram. So in questions PQR, STU, 6 activities are given, their immediate predecessors are given, and the estimated duration is also given. Let's try to draw the network diagram. So we will start at 1, and first activity is activity P. So let's say this is activity P, this is 2. Now, and this and activity P do not have any immediate predecessor. So it means P is the starting activity And similarly, Q is also the starting activity Q. Now, here comes the activity R. So activity R has the immediate predecessor as Q. So Q is there. So R would be somewhere here. This is activity R. Now comes the activity S. So if you see, activity S has the immediate predecessor as activity T and R. So but T is here, R is here, and activity S will have predecessor as P and R. So let's say this is activity S, but activity S needed not only R but P also. But this is for activity S. So we will join this particular with a dummy activity to the node 4 by a dummy activity D1, so that activity S now have immediate predecessor S. With the help of dummy activity D1, it has activity P and activity R. So now let's call it 5. Now comes to the next, that is activity T. T is have only the predecessor P. So this will come as T. So now T has only the predecessor P, but S has both P and R. That is why we use the dummy activities. Now the last is activity U, which have the immediate predecessor as T and S. So this is 6 and this is activity U. So now we have our network diagram. Now if you see, there is only one estimated duration is given. So we know that this is a problem of critical path method. There is no probability given. There only one type of time duration is given. So we are sure that this is a problem of critical path method. Now what is this critical path? So it is the maximum time consuming path from the first event to the last event in the network diagram. So it is the maximum time consuming path from the first event to the last event in the network diagram, and the time taken along the critical path is termed as expected project completion time, and the activities along the critical path are termed as critical activities. So now for activity P, the duration is 5. For activity Q, the duration is 1. We know dummy activity do not consume any time or resources. For activity R, the duration is 2. For activity T, duration is 6. For activity S, duration is 4. Activity U, duration is 3. In critical path method, we can traverse this particular network diagram in 2 ways. So one is the forward pass computation. Now, what is this forward pass computation? In this, we compute the time at which an event is expected to be computed at the earliest. So any event can happen at the earliest can be computed by traveling the network diagram by the forward pass. So let's say if you have one event I here, one event j here, taking x time ij. So the earliest time for event I is ei and the earliest time for event j is ej. So ej can be calculated as the maximum of all ei plus te ij. Now come to the next page. Similarly, we have backward pass computation. In this, we compute the time in which an event must be completed at the latest. So if you have one event I, one event j taking a time of te, so the latest time for event I is li and the latest time for event j is lj. So li can be calculated as minimum of all lj minus te of ij. So now the question was asking that if all activities other than S take the estimated amount of time and the maximum duration of activities S without delaying the completion of the project. So what is that signifying? So it is signifying that they want to delay the activity S by as much time as possible unless they are not delaying the whole project completion time. So that term we call it as total float. Now what is this total float? It denotes the amount of time by which an activity can be delayed. Keep in mind, this is the amount of time by which an activity can be delayed without delaying the project completion date. So it is the extra time available for an activity without delaying the project schedule. How can we calculate the total float? So total float can be calculated as for any activity as Lj minus so total float equals to Lj minus Ei plus Te of Ij. So for any activity coming out of I to j, total float can be calculated as latest time for node j minus earliest time for node I plus Teij. Now go back to our network diagram and try to calculate the earliest time and the latest time for each event or node. So starting from equals to 0, event 2 can happen earliest at by using this particular formula. If you see 0 plus 5, that is equals to 5. Similarly, event 3 E equals to 0 plus 1, that is 1. Now, if you come to event 4, here the event 4 can happen only after event 2 and event 3. So if you see with respect to event 2, the earliest time for event 4 would be 5 plus 0, that is 5. But if you calculate with respect to event 3, it would be 1 plus 2, that is 3. So 5 comma 3, and maximum of 5 comma 3 is 5. Now come to event 5. Event 5, for event 5, calculate with respect to event 2, that would be 5 plus 6, that is 11. And if you calculate with respect to event 4, that would be 5 plus 4, that is 9. So 9 comma 11, maximum is 11. It would be 11. And for the last event, event 6, it would be 11 plus 3, that is 14. And we assume, since no other project completion time is given, we will assume that the latest time for event 6 is equal to the earliest time for the last event, that is event 6. So L would be 14 for event 6 as well. So for event 5, L would be 14 minus 3, that is 11. For event 4, L would be 11 minus 4, that is 7. Now come to event 2. So event 2, calculating the latest time with respect to event 4 would be 7 minus 0, that is 7. And if you compute with respect to event 5, that is 11 minus 6, that is 5. So 5 comma 7, minimum is 5. So L for event 2 would be 5. And similarly, for event 3, it would be L equals to 7 minus 2, that is 5. And here L equals to 5 minus 5 is 0, and this 5 minus 1 is 4. So 0 comma 4, minimum is 0. So it would be 0. And if you see, we have our critical path as 1 to 2 to 5 to 6. So PTU is our critical path. But here we will try to calculate the total float. So total float for activity S would be equals to, if you go back to our network diagram, so activity S has event 4 and event 5. So event 4 is the I event and event 5 is the J event, and the formula for total event is LJ. So it would be L of activity 5 of event 5, that would be 11. So 11 minus E of I, that would be E of event 4, that is 5. So 5 plus activity S is taking a time duration of 4. So this would come as 2. So total float for activity S is 2. Now go back to the question and see what the question is asking. So now we know that the total float for activity S is equals to 2. Now what is this total float? It is the extra time available for that particular activity without delaying the project schedule. And the question is asking the maximum duration in weeks of the activity S. So duration of activity, so maximum duration for activity S would be equals to total float for that activity plus the time taken for that activity. So total float is the extra time by which we can delay the activity, that is 2 weeks, plus this activity anyway will take 4 weeks to get completed. So the maximum duration of that activity would be 6 weeks. So this is our numerical type of question. So our answer in weeks would be 6 weeks. Thank you.